welcome back once again to Walking with Christ. We're here in the Antelope area of Sacramento, California, and my name is Brother Doug Harmon, and I'm sitting here with Sister Megan Robertson.
Thank you.
And Megan, could you go ahead and introduce yourself?
I'm an immigrant from Laos and Thailand, and now my family and I live in the Antelope area.
Well, that's awesome. So tell us a little bit about your family, growing up, if you will.
I was born and raised in the jungles of Laos, and when it went into communists, we escaped and fled into Thailand, where we were captured and put in a refugee camp, where we stay until we were sponsored here. And then years later, I was introduced to the gospel.
And when you first came to the United States, where were you at? Were you in a place where you had contact with members of the church at that time?
No, I was not aware of the church.
Okay.
It wasn't until years later when I was attending a community college.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about that, when you were attending that community college, and who it was that introduced you to the church.
I was working part-time in the office and attending college. When the office supply was low, I was sent on an errand in a very bad neighborhood to get some stuff for the office. And upon returning to my car from the store, I noticed that I had a flat tire. It was not just flat, it was slashed. And so I went in the store, tried to get help, and I was turned away by the store manager and everyone that was around. And so I went back to the car in the parking lot where there were people gathering and mocking and throwing things at me. And so I felt that it was safer if I went back in the store, but I had no plans on how to get out of that situation, and it was getting dark. And so I'm walking up and down the store and asking the manager to let me use their phone, and I was turned down, and I absolutely did not know what to do. And there was these two young men in a dress with a name tag, and they approached me and they said, "Ma'am, you look like you're in a lot of distress. Is there anything we can do to help you?" And so I said, "Yes, but I don't think you can. I need to change my flat tire so I can get out of here." And so they walked me to the parking lot. Within 10 minutes, they had changed my tire, and I was ready to head back, and I didn't have any money. And so I apologized for that. And they said, "We don't need any of your money. We do need to ask you one thing." And I said, "Absolutely. I know you're in a hurry," one of them said, "but the next time you see two men like us approach you and want to teach you something, will you promise us that you will listen?" And so I made that promise, and every time for the next couple of months, there are two young men coming towards me, and I look, and each time I didn't see a name tag, I was disappointed. And eventually I met up with them, and I was taught. And when I was taught, I felt like I had already known because of the life that Heavenly Father had given me in Laos and Thailand.
The Lord works in mysterious ways.
He does.
Placed you in a place where you could have contact with the missionaries. And did those missionaries, were they the ones that actually taught you, or was it someone else?
No, it was not. I started teaching, and my family was against the whole process, and it was through years later I ended up marrying someone who was an inactive member, and that's how I learned. But the seed was planted when those two missionaries came to my rescue. And the first thing that I taught my boys as they were approaching missionary age was I made sure they knew how to change flat tires.
That's really awesome. It's really, really awesome. So how, from that point, then you were in college, and from the time that all occurred, you learned about the church, you got the missionary discussions, and how long after all that occurred were you actually baptized?
It actually came in pieces.
Okay.
Because I was living from one state to another with job transfers. Like you said, it's amazing how the Lord puts people in our lives, in places that where we need them. Our family was transferred to Delaware. And we got there with not an established place to stay, and so we stay in a hotel for a whole month while looking for a place to rent. While at the grocery store, someone had noticed that we were new and asked us where we came from. And we told them our situation. Well, guess what? She was a member of a congregation, and her bishop had a rental. And so we rented from them, and then I picked up my discussions with them, and that's where I was baptized. Mm-hmm. But the pivotal moment for me throughout all the years, it took a couple years, not because of my own reluctance, I just got pieces here and there. I was sitting, it was during general conference, and I was sitting in my sister-in-law's living room, and President Monson was talking. And to this day, I don't exactly remember what he said, but he said something, and I felt like hearing what he just said to me, I had come home. I was thousands of miles from my family and in a very unstable living arrangement because we were moving. But at that moment, I knew that I heard the true gospel of Jesus Christ, and I knew that being a part of it is going to help me get through this life. And I wanted that more than anything else. But then we had to move to Delaware.
Mm-hmm. So who were you living with at the time?
We were living with my in-laws.
Okay. So from Delaware, so we're in California now.
Right.
So through your conversion with the church, were you able to attend there in Delaware? Were you attending meetings and
Yes.
things like that? So tell us about your testimony at that point in your life, if you can.
I felt that I had a strong testimony. I believed everything that I read, and they touched my heart. And I said prayers that I knew that it was being heard and answered. There were many things that I didn't quite understand yet, but it wasn't years later that my testimony became strong. It took me a little while to learn, but initially when I heard the gospel, I knew that it was something familiar to me.
Mm-hmm. So. That's really awesome. That's so awesome. And I've known you for such a long time.
Right.
And we've served in the church together in our stake and such. And so what brought you to California?
It was a divorce. Yes.
Okay. But it's a new beginning.
Yes.
Correct? So I'm familiar with your husband now. So would you like to introduce your husband?
Yes.
Rick.
His name is Rick Robertson. And he and I met many years ago at a Halloween dance.
Rick's a member of the church.
He's yes.
Yes.
So he was a patient and I was a nurse. And we connected and we raised our children through the gospel, and it's not perfect, but it's been great. We often said that we have eternity together. And so the time that we have now is an opportunity to grow and to serve God. And so we take every opportunity that we're given as we are apart so that we continue to be strong and continue to strengthen our faith in our callings, in our efforts to minister to others and to be good examples to our family and our community.
We had a chance to talk earlier. Tell me a little bit about tell us a little bit about what you were saying about your mother.
My mother belongs to another faith, and my father passed away about 4 years ago. And after a time, I was able to do his work. And I didn't talk about this with my mother because I wasn't sure how her faith worked. And she approached me and said that she had done my father's work in her faith, and that it's okay if I do my father's work in my faith. And she said, because when we die and we get to the other side, we wake up and I realize we have the same God.
That's a really great story. That's really awesome. Tell us a little bit about what and how your testimonies helped you with serving in the church. Has your testimony grown and increased while you serve?
Yes, absolutely. Rick and I were just having a discussion. He's given an assignment to do something in Elders Quorum, and we were just talking about how uncomfortable that is. Just like preparing for a talk, and we were reminded that Heavenly Father loves us enough to give us challenges, beyond our comfort zone, so that we can grow and become a better person than we think we can be. And so each time that I have a challenge that I have to meet, and I go to Heavenly Father and I get divine power to be able to do those things. It intensifies my faith and my testimony, and it helps me to prepare for things that I don't even think that I can do. But I know I can because I've seen it happen. So yes, serving does give us opportunities to strengthen, definitely for me, to strengthen our faith. And we get something out of it. And I often tell my children, Heavenly Father does not need you to serve. You need Heavenly Father to take your service so that you can learn and grow.
We talked about challenges that you've been through. Tell us a little bit more about your life you had in Laos prior, when you were younger.
As a child, I suffer from a lot of illnesses. And there was one that I particularly remembered. I had been sick with fever for over a month, and I was declining really badly. So the neighbors came together in the village and told my dad that we need to prepare for the worst. And so they gather and help my dad build a coffin for me. And before I had to use that coffin, there was a stranger that came through our village on horseback. And he asked what was going on with the building of the coffin. And the neighbors told him that they were building it for me because I had been sick and it didn't look like I was going to make it. And so they explained my symptoms to him. So he came to our house and he told my father, I know a way that you can get your daughter well. And so he told my father, you need to get on horseback. It would be a 2-day of riding. And you get to this place and you get to that hut and you go in there and you tell them what you need and what's going on with your daughter, and they will give you something to bring back. And you come back as soon as you can and you give it to her. And so he did. Reluctantly, knowing that by the time he got back, I was not going to be alive. He got back, and I was given the pills, and I recovered. We later found out that it was penicillin that helped an infection that my body was feverishly fighting for over a month. I remember that story often as we have opportunities to help other people with their trials, as we go through struggles, and there are people out there that Heavenly Father is sending for our aid.
That's awesome. So after that point, your family was still together, and you had to transition from there to another place. Can you tell us a little bit about the difficulties you had to go through with your family at that time of your life?
We had to escape Laos after it went into communism. So when we escaped Laos and crossed the Mekong River and ended up in Thailand, we were captured and put in the refugee camp. If we didn't escape Laos, we would be executed. But through the resource of my grandfather, who navigated us through the jungle and the river, we ended up in Thailand. And we were in the refugee camp for years until we were sponsored here.
That must have been a really difficult time to be in a refugee camp. Your grandfather was the one who guided you through
Yes.
the jungle. Was he in the refugee camp with you?
Yes.
Yes. So your family, sister, siblings, were with there?
Yes.
How many in your family?
I was the only child until my adopted brother came into our family. But we were always gathered in big groups with uncles, aunts, cousins, and supported each other through all the journeys that we took.
Such a trial that your family went through, and that probably had a big build up for you. So when you were contacted by the missionaries, that could have been prompting you from way back when. So,
Yes.
I'm sure that you had a driving force. So your whole family made it to the United States.
Yes.
Tell us about that point. What kind of trials, if any, that you had to go through when you were here in the United States, besides what you've already shared?
The trials that, just like the trials that I had in Laos and Thailand, at the time they were not trials. They were just survival. And so they weren't, the times were hard. I didn't speak the language. One of the things that I had a bishop that told me, when someone approaches you, consider how you interact with them, because when you get to the celestial kingdom, if they're sitting across from you, how you would feel. And I thought, okay, I would feel terrible, but since I have a deeper conversion of the gospel, I know that we would feel great. And so as I remember high school is mean, and it was worse when you didn't speak the language. I remember going through the lunch line, and the food was foreign to me because we grew up eating different things. And so I went through lunch often without eating anything, but when I'm super hungry, I had learned from some of my friends that have gone through it, and in order to get lunch, and I don't think it's the same, but in the 80s, the lunch ladies were mean. They had those hair nets on, and I think it's because they had to deal with a lot of bad behaving teenagers. So they had to set an example and not let people get away with stuff. And so for me to get anything, I learned that, when my turn comes up and they're yelling at me and banging on my tray, I just said the word same, which means they would give me the same thing that the person in front of me got. And so sometimes it worked out great, and sometimes the person in front of me wanted to do a trick on me, knowing what my strategy was, and then we get something terrible. And so I think of those people that had an opportunity to help me adjust and acclimate to America. And I think that when I get to this celestial kingdom and I'm sitting across from them, I think we would just smile. I think there won't be any animosity or any hatred, and we just have a good laugh.
You were destined to run into the missionaries that day. How do you think it would have been if your life that you just described to us as a teenager, if you'd have had the gospel prior knowledge, if you had that knowledge then? It sounds to me like you were the same person.
If I had we were surviving, and in all the countries, but if I had known that when I die, that I go and live with Heavenly Father, and that I go and live with my loved ones who have passed on, I would have given up a long time ago. And so when I look back, and I know that Heavenly Father loves me so much, it is by design that I didn't know the things that I should not have known at the time, so that I would make the effort and work hard. And as I look back on all those experiences, they strengthen me, even in the trials that I go through, as I reflect on all the times that I see His hand in my life and how He's sent people to help me. Just makes me humble and realize what kind of a worth that He thought or thinks that I am, to allow me to go through this life and having all the experiences, and giving me an opportunity to learn in a way that it has been.
Have you had an opportunity since joining the church to share the gospel with your family?
Yes.
And how receptive were they?
It's not, seeds are planted, but it's not.
You're the seed.
In my patriarchal blessing, that's what it says. I have opportunities. And I think that doing my father's work was a really good first step. And my father was a great, great man. We often say he was in our hearts and mind, he was the best disciple of Jesus Christ, not being a member of his church.
I wish I would have been able to meet your dad.
You will
That
someday.
would have been a pleasure. I will someday.
Yes.
Tell us about your daily prayers, and maybe how those help you through the daily process.
I feel that when I go through trials, I try to remember when great things happen in my life to thank Heavenly Father, because I know it is from Him that those great things happen. But when I go through trials and having some challenges in my life, all it takes is some effort on my part, and for me to go to Him and ask for help. And even though I might not get resolution from the prayer, my faith in the process has already solved the problem. I've already received the strength that I need to be able to endure what's placed in front of me. And I think that comes from an experience I have in the refugee camp. I suffer from a flesh-eating disease around my ankles, and it grew to the bone. We had treatments for many years where I submerged my feet in a bucket of peroxide, and as it bubbles over, my mom rolled up a sock, put it in my mouth so that she can muffle my scream. So this went on for a very long time until they told me that in order to save my leg, they had to amputate my feet. And
I can see that you still have both of them.
I still have them, yes. But as a loving mother that my mom was and is, she did everything she could to find a different solution. So she went around asking for help, and she heard of a lady that people go to her house, and she says a chant. And after the chant, people are usually healed. And so we reached out to her, and we made an appointment, and we were given instructions to be very reverent when we get to her house and to listen to what she says. So we arrived at her house, and it's been a long time. It's been over 40 years. And she had us bow our heads and had us close our eyes, and she reiterated that we need to listen to every word she said and to remember it and to keep it in our heart and repeat it often in our heart and our mind. And we thought she was going to start chanting Willie Lau, but it was a very soft voice. And as a loving mother who wants her child to be healed, my mom took to heart every word that was said. And so we went home, and she often, she said the same words in her mouth and in her mind and her heart often. And eventually, things started to get better with my ankles. And I can barely see any scars around my ankles, but I will never, never forget that my Heavenly Father loved me so much that He sent to us. He put someone in our way that show us how we can request for His divine healing power.
Power of prayer.
Yes.
That's strong.
And so when we thought it was the chant, it was a prayer, and I had just realized that very recently.
So is there anything else that you'd like to share with us this evening? Maybe your testimony, if you'd like to.
From experience, and then also my testimony is that God is in every fiber of our lives. And He also allows trials in our lives so that we can learn and grow and be strengthened. And if I remember to recognize all the people that He sends my way to help me, then I feel His love, His infinite love, and I'm closer to Him. And He sends that love to each and every one of us. And when we are overcoming challenges to become a better version of ourselves, He doesn't let us do that alone. And I'm grateful for that.
Well, in all that you've told us this evening, we've learned and understand that God and Heavenly Father guided your life to this point that you're at right now. He had a hand in everything. And I'm blessed, and we're all blessed, to have had you here tonight to share your story, your awesome story. It's heartwarming and learning. And we thank you for doing that. thank you for joining us this evening on Walking with Christ. We've had the opportunity to speak with Sister Megan Robertson, and join us again next week.
Hey there, I'm Elder Wendell. Thank you so much for choosing to grow closer to Jesus Christ with us. We are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and our focus is to help others to learn about Jesus Christ's gospel and how they can change and become new through the atonement of Jesus Christ. We can help you learn about Him and His restored gospel and how it can help you. Comment below or message us to learn more about it today.